You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with creator and host, Nomad. With 20 plus years of experience in the music industry, Nomad has done just about everything to earn a living as a career musician. From being music director to celebrity artists, playing iconic arenas and stadiums, composing for film and TV, and even playing your average local club gigs, he's done it all. Nomad's mission is to empower musicians across the globe with strategies for a sustainable career while blasting stereotypes, and to bring you tried and true wisdom from his colleagues in this crazy business we call music.
On today's episode of the Career Musician Podcast, we have Mr. Tariqh Akoni. That is Tariqh as in Tariqh, Akoni, Akoni. If you don't know who he is, look him up because believe me, you've heard his guitar skills. With a list of credits like Josh Groban, Christina Aguilera, Elton John, Herbie Hancock, Patti LaBelle, Yolanda Adams, Luther Vandross, Al Jarreau, David Sanborn, Boyz II Men, Stevie Wonder, and literally the list goes on. Now, Tariqh is a good buddy of mine. When I came out here in 2005, we had some mutual friends that introduced us, and you know what? He helped me out. Not only did he welcome me to the town as a fellow guitar player, but he showed me around and introduced me to some more people. So, check it out. Sit back as Tariqh and I chop it up right here on the Career Musician Podcast. Welcome.
Nice to see you, buddy.
Yeah, welcome Tariqh Akoni to the Career Musician virtual interview session.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
I'm super happy to be here, buddy. Thank you so much for inviting me. And once again, we've known each other for years, so I'm glad we're finally getting a chance to do this.
Absolutely. Same here. Man, the cool things. There's so many cool things. Okay, and like you said, buckle in, listeners, because this might be a long episode. Two guitar heads going at it, square to square here.
Yes.
Like you said, we've known each other for a long time, and one of the memories that I have, one of the best memories, is when we were both rehearsing at Center Staging in different studios with different artists, and we had met through some people. I think it was Dave Hooper and a couple other people that introduced us. We met, and I said, hey, Tariqh, you know, I don't know why I asked you, but I was like, I'm looking for a new distortion pedal, I think, blah, blah, blah. This guy, he doesn't go, yeah, you know what, you should check out the XYZ. The next day, he brings a fucking basket of not a basket, what do you call it? A crate, a milk crate full of distortion pedals to my studio over, you know, he goes, here, man, why don't you just check these out for the next week or so and decide what you like? I was like, what? Who does that? Well,
I forgot about that, right.
Tariqh Akoni does that, so.
Oh, well, thank you, man. Well, that's a nice thing to say. I appreciate it.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was amazing. And then the next memory I have is me calling you and bitching you out because I felt like you stole a gig from me. And then, see, I'm like, you have to understand.
I didn't. No, trust and believe, I didn't steal it. I just borrowed it probably for one gig. And they were like, where's Michael?
See, I'm an open book, baby. No, and then like we have a couple good memories. And then we did a gig together for that same client, I think. And I don't know, but we have a couple good bar memories too, which we won't talk about.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that also, like, I truly remember when you moved to LA, because I remember there were a lot of people I knew, and I kept hearing your name through different people.
Right.
You know, like, it was like one of those things that hasn't happened a lot in and we can talk about the whole LA scene, but you know, it's a I always say it's a big town but a small scene. So you see a lot of the same people all the time. But man, I would hear your name through everything from jazz cats to like Latin cats to, you know, to rock cats and pop cats and all that stuff, and I was like, first of all, who is this cat? And second of all, I swear to God, if he takes my gig, I'm cutting somebody. No, but you know what I'm saying?
No, I know.
It's like, because it was like one of those things where, because I remember we were both doing some of the contemporary jazz stuff at the same time and doing some of the R&B gigs. And I remember specifically one guy I was working for, and I'd known him for a while. And he's like, man, I think I found like my dude. And I'm like, who? And he goes, his cat Mike Rapole. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
That's funny. You're just making stuff up. Look at you.
No, I swear, I'll say their names. I ain't scared, man.
I ain't scared.
Yeah. What are they going to do? Not hire me more? What's that?
I love it, man. And oh, wow. Okay. All right. There's so many questions, but first, because I feel like I want to follow some type of protocol. So
yeah, sure.
my typical protocol for the show is to get to know the guest, because obviously I know you, but perhaps the listeners don't. Some of the listeners.
Right on.
So the first thing I want to talk about is where you're from. What were your influences musically, and then more specifically, how did you gravitate toward guitar? So 3 points, but take your time.
No, and once again, you're more than welcome to chop this up as you see fit. But I have a little bit of a weird path because I live in Santa Barbara, California.
Right.
I grew up in Santa Barbara, California, and when it was time to go off to school, I didn't know I wanted to be a musician. I loved guitar, but it kind of came at it late. It was something that I did for me, where it was like, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. And then I went down to UC San Diego for a couple of years and recognized that all I really wanted to do was play guitar, So I thought, let me see if I've got any aptitude towards this. So I took a year off from school and went out to the Berklee College of Music. There's a longer story, but I wound up going out to the Berklee College of Music just to see if I had any aptitude, just to see if, what was the general scene. And I'd never focused on music like that. And that was the first time I encountered that level of dedication to the instrument and whatnot. Because, Santa Barbara's incredible, but it's a small town.
Right, but so you're an anomaly being from California because there's so many transplants.
Yeah, right.
So that's interesting.
So and it was also like Santa Barbara at the time. So I grew up in the '80s, and Santa Barbara at the time, there were a couple of really great players, and there was a cool scene, like a kind of a Latin jazz scene. And I use the term Latin intentionally because it was like that kind of '80s where Latin meant Brazilian. And so it was like, and a year to Flora, and Flora lived up here, and Randy Tico, and Dave Zaire, and Jeff Elliott, and like all these incredible musicians were up here, but I didn't realize you could make a living playing guitar. Like I didn't realize that there was, I thought to play, because it's such a small town, there's no quote unquote industry up here. Right. I mean, there are gigs, but it's not like you're doing sessions and jingles and yada, yada, yada and all that kind of stuff. Sure. So I had gone out to the Berklee College of Music, got really bitten by the bug, and then I got kicked out of school because I didn't have, I'm an open book. I didn't have the bread to keep going. Of course. And they basically said, hey, you don't have the bread, you're going to have to split. And I was like, well, I either go back to Santa Barbara where, I already know what the future is in Santa Barbara, or I stay in Boston and try to fight for it. And so I stayed in Boston and wound up playing all the, the shit clubs and all that stuff at the time, and made certain pathways. And it was a contemporary jazz saxophonist that really inspired me to move out to Los Angeles. There's a longer story, but I don't want to bore your listeners. That got me out to Los Angeles, and then I lived in LA for about 15 years, and then moved back to Santa Barbara about at the end of 2010. So I still primarily work in LA. I just happen to live up here. So I'm always commuting down or flying out of Santa Barbara Airport.
Well, first of all, I think it's great because the quality of life in Santa Barbara is beautiful, as you know.
Well, yeah, I feel very fortunate, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's neat that you get to still live home, quote unquote, Yeah. And I remember when you made that transition, you emailed everybody and you were like, hey, I'm headed back to my home grounds, but I'll be commuting. Right. I remember you saying that, yeah.
Well, and at the time I was a little tripped out because, there were a couple things that inspired the move. I was going through a divorce at the time. Yeah. So that kind of necessitated having a different place for a little while and figuring out what the deal was. But then the other side of it was when I realized I could make the commute, I was really fortunate that it was in a lot of the social media. I mean, I've had a number of gigs that, or I should say, employers or contracts that I've held for a number of years. But I was really fortunate that it was right when social media was taking off. So even though it used to be if you lived someplace else, nobody knew where you were. It was out of sight, out of mind. But being able to live up here and have a social media presence, people feel like I'm right next door. And also, this was around when Cafe Cordial was really kicking off. So what I would do is I would typically schedule at least a gig a month at Cafe Cordial. And the great thing at Cordial is they would list the guys playing.
Right.
So anybody that went through, you'd see a calendar and it'd say Tariqh Akoni. Like, oh, I guess he comes down to LA still.
Right.
So I was able to, find a couple of ways to stay in people's minds and mouths and hearts and all that stuff and keep working. And I always joke I have to work in LA to afford to live in Santa Barbara.
Yeah, I think that's applicable anywhere in Southern California.
Right. That's fair.
I have to work. I really like that one. I have to work in LA. Anyway, that's great, man. Okay, so I love the fact that you're from here. That's so cool. A great hit. So you went all the way northeast to Berkeley.
Yeah.
You froze your patooties off because you're
Yes, I still have one patootie left. But yes.
Okay. I'm sure that was a big shock. So you come back to LA and you're working. Okay. I love that.
Yeah.
What was the original impetus for getting into music in general? Did you come from a musical family? Was it a moment on television when you saw an album you heard, or?
No, man, to be honest with you, I feel so fortunate to do it for a living. And to be honest with you, I didn't come from a musical family, and they still don't quite understand what I do for a living.
Right.
Like, they see me, on TV or whatever, but, but there was no real kind of, pathway through the jungle. And for me, really, it was something where I loved music, and it was something that was really personal to me. And a friend of my brother's named Brian Jeffries, if he's listening, Brian Jeffries had come to visit my brother went to University of Pennsylvania, and he had come to California to visit one summer, and he saw me waking up at like 5 a.m. to practice guitar before I went to high school.
Oh.
And he said to me, he goes, man, you need to go study music. He's like, you're a smart kid, but if you study anything else, you're just going to fail because this is all you want to do. I was like, oh, he's full of shit. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Next thing you know, I go down to UC San Diego, and I'm almost failing out because all I wanted to do was play. So for me, going to Berkeley, I originally was going to go to MI, but that fell through. So for me, going to Berkeley was me taking a semester off to go, is this something that I could pursue? Is this something I have any... Because I'd love to be able to. I'd love to be able to make a living. And actually, I always say, because I've done some master classes for Berkeley, and I still have a relationship with the school and some of that stuff. And I'm actually doing an online educational thing for one of the guys at Berkeley. And one of the things, I was literally just talking to him yesterday, and he talked to me about the first time I did a clinic there, and me saying that, that moment in time for me of getting kicked out was probably the most important thing that could happen. Because I had to make a decision of, are you going to pursue music? Are you going to, people say play like your life depends on it. And it was literally like,
I like that.
Your life depends on it. And I didn't feel like I had the skill set at the time. So it's like, well, you better learn quickly how to do this. So at the time, I couldn't read music. I didn't really play acoustic. There's a lot of things I just didn't do, and I was like, if I want to eat, I better figure this out fast. And for me, that was probably, they say the main motivating factors are fear and guilt. And I felt like that was a huge moment for me of like, if you really want this, now's your time to get it. So figure this shit out. And to me, knowing what that looks like, knowing what it means, and knowing what it means to go to the mat for something was a huge life lesson that I carry with me through every experience, So as much as I would have loved to have stayed and studied and gotten my degree and all that stuff, I was put in a position of, man, this is about survival. This is about the choices you make, about how you move through the world, the pathways you choose, instruments, learning to read music. It's not about, wow, this should be fun. It's about, man, you're not going to be able to feed your family if you can't do certain things. So it's like, I didn't have a family at the time, but you can't feed your girlfriend. Yeah.
Can't feed yourself.
Right. And I'm a big guy.
I love it. Yes, you are. How tall are you? 6'6"?
I'm 6'5" and flats.
6'5".
But I'm always wearing cowboy boots,
Yeah, so you're like 6'12". Jesus.
I'm about 6'12", yes. And I'm dense like a diamond.
No, you're slick, man. You have a very cool look.
Well, thank you.
Okay, absolutely. I'm sure that's not the first time you've been told that. Second, and I'll stop there. No more. I'm throwing any more compliments. There, right.
Yeah. It's funny. I do clinics for different schools and whatnot, and instead of going in and playing a bunch of guitar, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll say, listen, you can ask me anything.
Yeah.
You know, because at the end of the day, that's what I wanted. You know, I wanted somebody to tell me, like, shoot me straight. It's like, tell me, it's like, am I making a mistake? What's the deal? What is it like going to LA? What's it like working with these artists? You know, I mean, even like drugs and alcohol and how you navigate that stuff. To me, I was like, I just wanted somebody to be straight with me. So I always tell people, you can ask me anything.
I love that. I remember when I was around that high school age, and I'm from Long Island, New York, so I came up with Joe Satriani and Steve Vai.
Jesus, yeah.
You know,
oh God, yeah.
They were right in my same neck of the woods, so to speak. But
that's crazy.
I used to dream about all the time. Man, if I can meet these guys, I just want to sit down and talk to them and just pick their brain. And now the interwebs and technology has allowed us to do that. You know, because everybody's sharing everything. You know.
Yeah, but
it is interesting.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, buddy.
Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just to dovetail off of what you were saying, and there's a longer narrative to this, but I think that part of that thing of that hunger and like striving for information, and when we grew up in the 80s, it's like, you had Guitar Player magazine, maybe Guitar World, Guitar for the Practicing Musician. It's like, you know, it's like you were dying to get like a glimpse of what somebody was playing through or their approach, or like, remember you like the was it the King Biscuit Flower Hour, and you'd put a tape in your like your boombox or whatever. Well, there was a radio show that would broadcast live shows, and so I'd stick a cassette tape in, and just hope that like I could capture just to get a recording of a live Billy Idol show or live Van Halen or something. You know, but it was that thing. It's like, it was such an archaeological dig to get information. And like you said, it's so accessible, but there's a part of me that feels like with that accessibility, it's almost like, to me, vinyl, it's not just about the sound and texture of records. It's the culture of that. You have one kind of blue album, and you don't want your little brother playing with it because he's going to scratch it, or it's going to get left on the radiator. So it's like, music is so precious, and so to me, it's like, it's a different. Right now, you can get the whole Beatles catalog with with one download and never listen to the whole thing.
That's so true, and that's the thing. We take things for granted. So so the concept of mentorship, I think guys like you, are people like you and I, especially at that time in that era, we would have given our right hand to get a mentor that was connected and that we could have really fed from, right?
Absolutely.
So I love the fact that, like we said, it's so accessible now. It's everybody's sharing everything. I like the fact even that there's a lot of mentorship programs available. And then, which brings me to my next point, going back to accessibility. When you look at masterclass.com, I mean, what they're doing is incredible. They're taking celebrity status experts in their field and doing a deep dive of these masterclasses. I mean, I've been studying the one with Danny Elfman and Hans Zimmer, and
man,
and Steve Martin and Chef Gordon Ramsay. I mean, there's so many.
Totally.
What's his name? Dead Mouse, the DJ. There's so many. Cool things, right?
Totally.
Can you imagine if we had that when we were kids? I mean,
totally. Well, and I have to say, it's like, and I'm gonna be perhaps more honest than I should be.
Please.
But I have to say that I taught for a fair amount of time. At the head of the department at LA Music Academy.
Ooh, I want to hear about that too. Yeah.
It's now the LA College of Music.
Right.
And I remember it used to really frustrate me that kids would come in and they'd have access to all this stuff, and they wouldn't take advantage of it. And I had to kind of remember that it's like, you know what? It's not the access that makes someone great. That has to be in you to fight for it. You know what I mean? So I used to say years ago when I was with my ex-wife now, and this isn't why, but years ago, when we were dating and I was trying to have her move to Los Angeles with me, she said, "How do I know you're not one of those typical musicians and you're going to cheat on me and whatnot?"
Right.
And what I told her is, I said, "Listen," I said, "you know what? If you leave your door open, the only person that's going to rob you is a thief. It's not because there's the opportunity that turns someone into a thief."
That's right. Nice.
And similar.
Yes.
I'm glad I thought of it at the time. But to the same extent, it's like you've got to want it, and you've got to want it to a point where you got to want it knowing that there are times you're not going to be able to eat. You got to want it knowing that the times you're going to have to be away from your family. You got to want it. You have to lay awake at night dreaming about it. and want it so badly. So when you ask the question if you or I had it, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have it and we dug it out. You know, but you know what I mean? But it's not, to me, it's not just the access. Because similarly, I think that the one thing that's missing with those things, going back to mentorship, is the culture. You know, it's like you can get the information, but that culture, how do you act? How do you react? How do you, even when you shake a hand or you make eye contact, how do you respond to people? How do you respond to emails, communication? Those cultural things that you can't communicate through. It's not about Dorian. You know what I mean? It's not about Rick Solidian. You know what I mean? But those are the things to me that are ephemeral, and esoteric, that you have to kind of be around the cats. And so you and I, it's like, I got my ass kicked I don't know how many times. And it's like, but that's part of how you learn. You're like, well, I guess I won't do that again. And I had that happen just recently. I had somebody, blow a really great opportunity just because of the lack of those skill sets.
Right.
And it bummed me out because I was like, man, everything else was there. And I'm like, but sometimes those things get lost in the shuffle,
That I mean, you just articulated the whole premise of why the career musician exists. I mean, and now, not to toot my own horn here, because it's a community, first of all. And what you just said is testament to the fact that I'm not the only one that feels this way. I'm not the only one that sees the need for it. So we do need a sense of community mentorship for the generations,
absolutely,
like ours, to inform the up and coming generations. And that's what it's all about, empowerment. Let's talk about communication. I'm glad you brought it up.
Yeah. I use English.
Well, it's a great segue to my next question, which is, I'm going to skip one of them. We'll come back to your resume and credits.
Yeah.
But principles and methods. So, the principles of any concept, whether it's, like you said, existentialism, where it's kind of, not as clear, or if it's something as, plain as business proceedings, the principles never change, but the methods do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And
so go ahead.
I think
please.
I'm with you. And I think that, so when I was teaching, I'm trying to, every time I put this on my studio desk, there's a low end. You're probably going to have to roll off like at 100 or something. But when I was teaching, I used to say that so I was the head of a department, so I had teachers working for me. And one of the things that I shared is, to me, education works when there are three things present. One is the fundamentals, one is context, and one is concept. So conceptually, it's a similar premise, as you're saying. Right. The context has changed. Right. To now we have so many opportunities to stay in contact with one another. But fundamentally, I think that from a conceptual standpoint, you always have to remember, what is the experience of the listener? Like, what's the experience of the employer? You know what I mean? Because you want to make it as easy as possible for that person to hire you and for that person to pay you. Why would you make it difficult for someone to find you?
AKA people, don't text and DM gig details. Put that in an email so you have a paper trail.
Absolutely.
I don't care if you use the text to say, hey, I'm here at the gate. Is there a code? Or do I go around back to unload? Or that's fine. Yes. But for really important, pertinent details, put a nice, well thought out email together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With address, times, links, all that stuff. And my thing is, I don't like to send a lot of emails. So I tend to send one or two that are super informative. And I'll literally say, please read this thoroughly and respond with a copy or got it, something like that.
That's such a musical director thing, because that's exactly the same thing.
From one MD to another. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, because to me, I know what it's like when you have to think to yourself, once again, the experience of the listener. If I have 50 gigs that I'm juggling and trying to figure out, and I've got to do a deep dive and search for your email, like the one you sent with the directions. Right. It's like, man, that's going to take me 20 minutes that I can't spare, So, right. And if that's 50 gigs doing that, I'm screwed. So to me, it's like, there's one place you go, and I try to make sure that the subject line is very similar, yada, yada, yada. Mm-hmm. And that way, you want to make it, same thing with writing charts. Like, you're writing charts to be read. You know what I mean? You're not writing charts to be right. You know what I mean? It's like you're writing charts to be read and to be interpreted. So make it as clear as possible.
That's right.
So for me, in terms of the communication element of it, I think that, getting back to people very, very quickly, having a really easy way of kind of being able to be, contacted and communicated, making payment easy. Like, once again, I tell people, you can Venmo me, you can PayPal me, you can send me a check. Like,
right.
I want to make it as easy as possible
right.
for you to get me the bread.
Yeah.
Like, once again, why would I put roadblocks in front of you paying me? And
It's
so
so
for me,
true.
yeah, and we know people like that. Like, there are people I work with that are just like, man, can we meet at Starbucks and you can hand me a check? And I'm like, no, man. I'm like, I'm running.
Hell no.
Who
Who has time for that? Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like, can't I just bump you the money? Like, let me just,
Yeah.
So I think that the methods have changed, but there's a couple of fundamental concepts. One is also making sure that people remember to call you. Like, not just, once again, having the marketable skill sets, not just all those kinds of, fundamental things that you want to have in place in terms of just skill sets and availability, but that thing of staying in the mind's eye, and going back to what we were talking about earlier, living in Santa Barbara, theoretically, I'm 100 miles away from the competition or whoever is also trying to do the same jobs as I am. So for me, it's whether it's social media or whether it's, these different ways of people, remembering, oh, that's right. I wonder if Tariq's around or whatever. I wonder if Tariq's free.
Right.
To me, those are really hugely important, and we're all, it's kind of the Wild West. We're all finding our way of doing it. And the other part of that is we all have to have our own way. Because, like, you and I are not the same person. It's like we have some overlap in terms of styles or skills or people we listen to growing up or that kind of thing. But fundamentally, you're you and I'm me. And so if you try to dance the way I dance, it's going to look weird and vice versa. Similarly,
First
with
of all,
communication.
stop cursing at me. Don't ever tell me to dance.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, you don't want to see me dance.
You can't see right now, but he's dancing in front of the camera. No,
yeah, right. But you're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, that's so true. In a dry spell, let's talk about this. And the unique.
This is a great time to talk about it.
Right. I mean, this is COVID-19 season.
Yep.
So, in a dry spell, and this is a great concept with the uniqueness of individuals. How do you feel about that? And as it pertains to networking or following up via email or phone call or whatever it may be. Or social media
I think that there's a couple of things. I mean, as you know, there's always a balance. There's a balance between, reminding people that you exist and, feeling like you're bugging people,
Right.
And so for me, especially as we're moving into this millennium generation, whatever, decade, whatever you want to call it, I think that not only are there other means, but I also think that what people are finding is we have to develop new pathways. We have to develop new ways of revenue stream and all that stuff. So let me be a bit more specific. Right now we're in this COVID-19, period in time, which is affecting everybody greatly, and every tour has been called off. Every bar and club has been shut down and whatnot. So, because I'm thinking, if somebody comes back and listens to this, in a year,
right. No, it's good.
I just kind of want to put into perspective,
Perfect.
And it's literally not only kind of decimated the music industry and the entertainment industry, but there's also ancillary things. I've been talking to some of my movie friends about how that's affecting them and movie music, and we can talk about that later if you want.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, because at the end of the day, you can't have an orchestra in a room right now, so there's stuff happening.
That's right.
And the question is, are we going to be able to come back? So along with that, people are having to figure out what do these alternative revenue streams look like, whether it's writing, whether it's writing sync music, whether it's songwriting, whether it's composing. How do you kind of make your way in? Whether it's kind of an internet presence or education, like these things that can provide passive income and all these other things. And from a larger conceptual point, going back to our point in terms of concept, fundamentals, and context, from a conceptual standpoint, in my mind, the era of being able to be one person, one thing is over. There's
right.
one Vinny, and I mean he's also got other skill sets. But I'm just saying,
that was over a long time ago.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But for you and me, we always, that was what we looked up to and thought, man,
that's right.
I want to come to LA and I want to be, that dude, and just play my guitar and have my monster rack and smoke cigars, after the session. But now it's in a period in time where you have to look at a wider spectrum of the pie. You know, and you've got to sit there going, okay, for me, it was education, writing with education. It was also, I always tried to have my foot in a number of different, you know, styles and camps and all that stuff. It's something I enjoy, but also the realization that, like, you know, I work with Josh Groban, who's been Josh's musical director for, I've been with him almost 20 years, musical director since 2007.
Wow.
Yeah, but at the same time, you know, Josh doesn't tour every year. So I have to make sure that when he's not working, that I have these other things that are working, whether it's working in town, whether it's working with different artists, studio sessions, all that stuff, and making sure that, like, there's enough of that supports me throughout, you know, throughout the year. And I think that the dry spell thing, it always happens. It happens to everybody. There's, you know, a finite number of work, and, you know, skill sets change. You know, so when we were growing up, you didn't have to, as a guitar player, you didn't have to know how to run the board or mic drums or anything like that. So we're having to develop these skill sets and these other things in order to maintain a living. For me, it's also been writing. So for me, it's been, I have this studio that I'm working out of right now. So even though we're in this dry period for the industry, I have actually luckily been very busy every day, you know, doing co-writes, you know, writing, sync stuff, yada, yada, yada. And so to me, building that studio, and it's not that expensive anymore. You know, I run off of Logic Pro, and right now, if you run Logic Pro, I believe the software is $199.
It's $200, yeah. Yeah, $199, yeah.
Yeah, you get that, you get a small keyboard, and you've got access to basically everything that they had for Billie Eilish's last record and one of Adele's last records. It's like there's no reason you can't win a Grammy. So
with an interface, a small, like Apollo Twin or something, yeah.
Absolutely. Exactly. And even that, I mean, you could conceivably get one of, like, the Focusrite, like the Scarletts or something like that, and you can do most of the things that used to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. So to me, going back to your point, it's like really, it's building these bridges and these different pathways. And my hope, I'm optimistic right now. I feel like, as screwed up as this might seem, in terms of the industry, in terms of the world with COVID-19, we're building pathways that we don't necessarily have to retreat from once they lift the floodgates. Like, I'm still going to be able to Skype with you or Zoom with you.
Absolutely.
And we can still write songs together. We can still send files back and forth. So I'm investigating different ways of making this work a little bit better, because I like being home. My wife is awesome. I love hanging out with her. You know?
Kidding me? I was thinking the same thing. You know, I just got off the road from after a 12-year, I guess, residency with Babyface.
Yeah.
You know, just before the new year, so at the late 2019, I finished my quote unquote tenure with him, right?
Right.
And I looked at my wife and my daughter. I'm like, wow, girls, it feels so good to be home.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, I don't want to go on tour again. I don't want to leave.
I know.
You know,
I know.
so
I know.
agree. This is something, look, let's be honest. This is something that comes up around this time in a person's life when we're in our 40s.
Absolutely.
You know, early to mid to late 40s, you're like, wait a minute. I want to change my lifestyle. So this is all relevant. You know, whether we're going through some kind of global crisis or not, it's all relevant.
Well, I agree, and I think that this world crisis has forced our hand, but it's, you know, I was actually talking to my wife this morning about this, and just to be clear, I mentioned earlier my ex-wife. I obviously remarried. Just want to be clear.
Yeah,
you know,
just
make sure,
Same
just for
here.
the record, if anybody's keeping score at home,
guilty as charged.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, but
it's not uncommon. It's okay.
No, exactly. Yes, but I think that part of it, of not just kind of this period in life, but I was sitting with my wife this morning, going, you know, as screwed up as the world is right now, it's like we feel so fortunate and blessed, not only in our lives, but also in the fact that, you know, we're looking at it as an opportunity versus as, you know, a hindrance. We're like, well, okay. Right. We've been talking about doing this. We've been talking about, like, she's literally in a meeting in the other room right now, and she's doing Zoom meetings, and she's also has a private practice. So she's doing it via Skype, and we're like, this is something we've kind of craved, and now our hand is being forced, but let's make the best of it. Let's really solidify the space so it's something that we've always got to return to. And I think that what I'm seeing with the music community is it is obviously resilient. because people want to create music, they want to create art, and they're going to do it whether it's with two sticks in the woods or whether it's with and a Pro Tools HD rig. It's going to happen. So the question right now is we're just changing tools, changing location, and finding new pathways through, and I'm super optimistic about it.
I couldn't agree more. Well said, my friend.
Well, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. I can't ignore this anymore. So forgive me I jumped around a little bit, my listeners. Josh Groban, let's talk about your resume and credits.
Okay.
Let's rewind a little bit. You've been with Josh for 20 years. You've been his MD for 13 years.
Yep.
So I know you've played with a whole list of others. Just give us some of the big names maybe that people find interesting. I know Stevie. You've done one-offs with everybody. Stevie Wonder and Sting and
Yeah, and I toured with Stevie a bit, and Chaka Khan, Whitney Houston. I toured with Bette Midler, Christina Aguilera. I worked with Weezer and worked with I worked with them as a musical director actually a little bit.
Nice.
Worked with I have to think about it.
And the reason why I said I was like I perked up on that one because that's a nice change from the typical career musician's workload. We don't typically work with rock bands.
Yeah, with bands. Yeah,
right?
with kind of established bands. Exactly.
Right.
Well, and I mean, there's a whole site. I have to pull up a resume, but because I forget. Oh, Patti LaBelle and Chaka and all that stuff.
I'll put it in the notes. It'll be here. Yeah. But I just wanted to talk about it while we were here face to face.
No. I appreciate it, and I think I just actually have developed a really cool relationship with Kenny Loggins, and Kenny, I've loved him for years. I literally used to wake up every morning and eat my Cheerios and watch his Live from the Redwoods, VHS cassette.
Wow.
So nice. I was just had a Zoom meeting with him earlier this week, and I was like, it's Kenny Loggins on my screen.
That's cool.
So I've been really lucky, and part of the thing also, and this is something you and I've talked about before, and we share. And I should say that it was so cool to see you playing on Josh's last record on that song Symphony. It was so beautiful, and I had to send you the chart and send you. I was like, man, you killed this.
Yes. Thank you.
But the thing is, it's if someone were to enter into the industry, they might not assume that they're going to have a career that spans from Weezer to Josh Groban, and then to whoever Anastasia or whoever else, Tony Braxton, whatever. It's like no one. You don't think that, but you try to build up a set of skill sets. So there's the more general musicianship, more general kind of cultural stuff that you develop as a musician working in the scene, and then there are kind of the marketable skill sets like playing acoustic, singing, having classical technique, being able to play electric, getting good tones. Those things that if you are a good musician, you can necessarily go from playing, like we just did a tribute to Aerosmith. And I got to, Leanne Rimes. I used to work in Leanne Rimes' band, and Leanne Womack, I played with Leanne Womack. But to be able to go from country to, playing behind Josh to playing, with Sheila E. or whatever, it's like you start to develop these skill sets that can kind of cross through these different genres. Excuse me. And I think the more general part of it is, I remember years ago I did Saturday Night Live with Christina Aguilera, and a really good friend of both of ours, who shall remain nameless at the moment, but I'll tell you off air. But had seen the performance and was like, man, I saw you playing, and you didn't play anything for the first, verse and chorus, and I was like, yeah, I just laid out, and they're like, I don't know if I could do that, and I was like, and my thing was
you're supposed to.
Right, and my thing also was that was appropriate for the time.
That's
now the person who said it is an incredible musician and probably would have made it sound better. But my thing was my role right now, where I'm supposed to be, yada yada yada. It's okay for me not to play. Whenever I do gigs with other guitar players, I love being hey, I'll play acoustic, man. I'm I don't care. Let's that sounds like fun. We just did this tribute to Neil Diamond, and I was so excited because I got to play acoustic all night. And I was like, this is gonna be great.
I heard about that because our good friend Dave Hooper was playing drums. Yeah, Hoop.
Yes.
Who was on the guitar chair with you? Was it Michael Thompson or?
No, it was me.
Oh, you said you got to play acoustic.
Well, it was me and Dave DeLome was playing keyboards and guitar. But most of Neil's stuff is acoustic driven. So I played acoustic for most of the night, and then We also backed up Sammy Hagar and Chris Isaac, and Sammy played electric, and Chris Isaac played acoustic. I played electric with Chris.
That's so
But it's that thing where it's like, I love playing acoustic, but also it means that there's always a chair in the room when you've got somebody who's willing to to go, hey man, I don't care, I'll play the second or third guitar part. It's like, I'm just happy to be here, and hopefully I can keep it in the pocket and make the singer sound better and get the call back.
Yeah, well, when you're doing that self-deprecative kind of humility, I think, and let me correct you on that. So for the listeners who may not know, and I do believe this is a trait that the older generation of musicians have, us included. I think we're the last generation that really have this. When Tariqh says, "Oh, I just hope that I can play well enough to keep it in the pocket," so that's a bunch of bullshit, because Tariqh can fucking keep it in the pocket. Trust me. Basically, translated, he has groove, he has immaculate time and rhythm and things like that. What he's doing. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, what you're doing, and I want to point this out because I think it's important. Now, I'm making fun with it, but it's true. I do the same thing. We have this overwhelming sense to be extra humble.
Right.
And here's the crazy part. We are experts in our craft.
Yes.
I mean, I'm talking, if there was a neurosurgeon who was an expert in their craft at surgery, well, then we're all right there with that surgeon talking about skill set and, like you said, aptitude.
Absolutely.
We're right up there.
No, absolutely.
We haven't put in 10,000 hours. We've put in 100,000 hours.
Well, and let's
be real.
Well, and let's also be honest. It's like a surgeon doesn't practice surgery at home. We come home and we would.
There you go.
There
you go.
Yes, and to dovetail off what you were saying, but when I say that, I also want to correct myself. And what part of what I'm saying is I put my emphasis on the groove. So my point being, when I say if I'm playing the third guitar part, I put my emphasis on making that part sit where it needs to sit. I'm not playing rhythm like I'm waiting to solo. I'm not playing, you know what I mean? And that's part of my point, which is, I am focused on being the best acoustic guitar player in that moment that I can be, versus the idea of like, shit, I got to play acoustic. Man, I wish I could play that hip electric part. It's like, man, I'm cool. Like, I want to put all my energy into making that part live, and that was more my point than trying to be self-deprecating.
No.
But I know your point, and we do. It's like we tend to kind of
we downplay it. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I wasn't pointing any fingers, and I didn't mean it like that. I knew your point exactly. I think what I'm trying to get everybody to. That's right. Especially, and I keep saying the up and coming generations, because I'm hoping that the aspiring career musicians are listening and paying attention. Because look, just because you can play all the notes, man, doesn't mean you should.
Preach. Hi, this is Tariqh Akoni, and I'm a career musician.
The goal of the Career Musician Podcast is to provide valuable insight aimed at supporting working musicians. Please show your support by listening, downloading, subscribing, sharing, liking, and leaving a review.
Culminating a lifetime of experience, Nomad is the career musician. Stream the Career Musician Podcast, highlighting interviews with other industry professionals, providing insight and strategies for a sustainable career for the next generation of aspiring career musicians. You're listening to the Career Musician Podcast with your host, Nomad.
Well, and here's the thing. Well, I mean, that's a huge lesson that, to me, it's because it's like, I think especially when you're young and you're coming up, you feel like, man, I got to show people what I can do. And Ricky Minor was a huge mentor for me. And one of Ricky's things, he said, listen, you're going to get noticed. The question is, what are they going to notice? And so to me, I used to tell people, listen, soloing is super important. When it's your time to step up, you got to step up. But if you make your passion making the singer sound better, you'll never stop working. Because rarely does someone just hire you to solo better than them. They're hiring someone to make them sound better. And then you're a part of a team, and music is a team sport. So to me, kind of focusing on those things of like, we're going to make this is going to be slang. This is going to be the best sounding band you've ever had. Those things for me are hugely important. And I think sometimes when you're coming up, you're so anxious for people to recognize that you can play through giant steps, so that you can yada yada. You've got the hippest new soul licks, or man, nobody's transcribed Jubu like me. Check this out. Versus which is great and has its moments. And obviously Jubu's a brilliant musician.
Come on.
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's like
one of my favorites too. Yeah,
that could be a whole other podcast.
That could be a whole other discussion.
Just worshiping Jubu. And Jubu, if you're listening, I love you, buddy.
That's right. Us too. Me too. Us too.
Us too. Yes, but it's like, but that thing, as you're saying, it's like when you recognize that it's not only a team sport, but you find yourself in different rooms. So, as an example, going back to your earlier question about during dry spells, for me, writing music is a huge marketable skill set. Right. But even more so is being able to write with others. Right?
That's right.
Because then you find yourself in more rooms. That's twice as many opportunities to get placed. And it's like people like, man, let's make sure Tariq's in the room because, he lifts the spirit. He came up with a great bridge, or yada yada yada. So to me, it's like understanding that collaborative part of it is part of that expands your network, right? Okay. Part of puts you in more rooms, virtually or otherwise. But it's like, to me, those are the things that like I always think are common sense, but I realize that sometimes they're not. Yeah.
Yes. What we think is common sense sometimes we take for granted. That's another good point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somebody said
because it might not be that obvious.
Yeah. Somebody said, if it's common sense, why do so few people have it?
That's a great, I've heard that before. That's fantastic. And this is a great segue. I love it. This is a great segue because your discography is just as extensive as your live performance resume. Let's talk about studio etiquette.
Yeah.
First of all, the way sessions are being recorded and maintained and the protocol of a session has changed drastically over the years.
Totally.
But I still do believe, and there are the occasional times when we all get called to go to the record plant or
Capitol
East
or
West
something,
Studios or Capitol. Those are few and far between. But let's talk about studio etiquette because, again, the generations even before us, like you talk about guys like Tommy Tedesco.
Oh, my God.
Dean Parks and these cats who we, like you said, came up worshiping. We love these guys.
I swear to God, I want to get some Dean Parks like playing cards, like baseball cards. Be like, man, I've got a Dean Parks 1976.
See, that's a great idea.
Have stats and his ring on the back. Yeah.
Right, and then I'll bring my Tommy Tedesco pack.
There we go. I got a vintage Tedesco today. Yeah.
That's a good idea. Hey, we should talk more about that.
I like that. Yeah.
Only me, and 5 other guys.
I was going to say, right, exactly. Yes. Who all already know each other, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But so studio etiquette, look, even if you're in a virtual session, via, a video conferencing, or if you're in the room together, or if you're just, sending links back and forth via correspondence, I believe there still is an etiquette.
Yeah.
And, for me, what sums it up, eyes and ears wide open, mouth shut, right?
Yeah, dig it. I like that.
That's a classic old kind of, MO.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit, with your experience back in the olden days,
yes,
quote unquote, and the new business model for sessions.
Yes. Well, that's a great one. And it's one of those things that's hard to learn outside of the environment. You know what I mean? Because it's like, it's intelligence versus wisdom. Meaning, it's like, you can give somebody all of, like, I could read you a list of things to do, but, it's when you kind of encounter that you kind of put it into practice. And also, you have to, like, I think your quote is so great because you have to be reactive. Like, sometimes you walk in and you don't know what happened before you got there. Like, all the mics could have taken a shit or something like that. And so you have to be like, I got to be really delicate today because I can tell that, like, people are fried. They're on their last nerve. And, like, they're trying to get this acoustic thing, like, laced.
Dialed in.
Yeah, so that they can get, so they can move on. And they're losing thousands of dollars, or, like, or whoever's, like, on the computer, like, listening in to the session. And just, it's like, so they're stressed out. And just, you
That's
always,
right.
once again, in my mind, you always want to bring that bonus. You always want to bring that added value. And I feel like that, as a musician, as well as a writer, as well as a producer and a musical director, is you always want to bring that added value and maybe find ways to, sometimes surreptitiously highlight that added value. Like, it's always good when people see, they're like, oh, Tariqh brought a mandolin. Thank God he brought a mandolin. Oh, man, I forgot to mention it. We're going to need to do a nylon pads. It's like, oh, I got my nylon right here. I got you. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And, like, those kinds of things where, like, being aware of the room around you, but that thing of always having that added value. And one of the things I used to tell students is there's a lot of stuff I can't control. Like I can't control my height. I can't control the fact I'm African American. I can't grow hair in certain places, as I show you my bald spots. But
I have one too. Thank you.
Well, mine are connecting at this point. So, but I can control whether I show up on time, whether my gear's working, whether I learn the material, all those things that to me, those are the things that in my mind get you into the shower, to get into the car, to drive to the field, to get into the game. Like you're not even in the game with those basic things of playing in tune, in time.
Right.
That everybody should be able to get up and over that. To me, it becomes a question of I keep leaning back. To me, it becomes a question of added value.
Those are the basic credentials just to have your name picked in a hat.
Absolutely, just to be on that list of who can we call? And what's so funny is I've had a lot of artists and musicians say that to me. Like when I haven't been available for something, I've had everybody from like Ricky Minor and David Foster and like Irving Azoff go, who can we call? Like who, because they're like, I don't go to clubs. I don't know who's new on the scene. I don't know who's out there. Who can we call?
Right.
And to be the end of that conversation of, man, call Mike Rapole or call whatever. It's like to get into that camp, you have to have certain just basic skill sets. Then above that is the added benefits. Like I remember talking to Bernie Herms about you, and Bernie said to me, Bernie said, he said, man, he's like, Michael, when he plays nylon string, he elevates the entire room. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, that is what we're talking about, which is, why wouldn't you call somebody like that? And I remember years ago talking to Tom Scott about Nathan East, because I didn't know Nathan at the time. I know, and I
see Nathan.
Come on. I mean, seriously, it's like, come
on,
and
get out of here.
Come on,
like it's over.
Are you kidding me? It's money in the bank. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
But it's like
plus a retirement account is what it is.
Exactly. It's gold in the backyard is what it is. But it's like, I was asking Tom because I saw that he played on one of Tom's records, and I'm like, hey man, I'm like, how do you like working with Nathan? And Tom said, what's not to like? He's like, the guy is he's like, he's a brilliant musician. He sight reads his ass off, has perfect pitch, has a photographic memory, great tone and time. He's like, what's not to like? And to me, it's like those things of that added value of like, and Nathan, every time Nathan walks into a room, the room, like you're like
lights up.
Yeah, you're like, man, let's make music today. Let's do it. Yeah. And why wouldn't you want somebody around like that all the time? And we also
incredible.
Yeah, and we also know the other end of the spectrum. We know that people that like always drag the scene down, or it's always whatever, and it's just, and those people just they don't get called back a lot. It's like,
let me expound on that, and I think we all know personality types like Tariqh is mentioning, but let's be real, and this is kind of something that I've come to over the years, and I've learned, and it's by my own susceptibility, okay, that I'm speaking. So I'm acknowledging, first of all, that we're all human and we're all susceptible to anything at any time.
Absolutely.
I'm further taking responsibility and saying, yes, I have been guilty of this before. And thirdly, the solution is taking responsibility via self-awareness.
Yeah, man.
And that's where I'm at. So that's how I have arrived at this statement that I'm about to make. The statement is music, anything creative, anything artistically creative that we create within our beings, and especially when it's intangible, okay? Because a painting you can see, music you can't see. You can hear it, but you can't see it. It's a little different than food and visual arts.
Absolutely.
In that sense, it's like there's zero tangibility to it. The vessels that create it have to be open, and I'm getting a little deep here, but they have to be open to a vast spiritual world that goes beyond our ability to comprehend.
Yes.
That being the case, we are super susceptible to negative energy. And when we allow that negative energy to come in, what happens? We put out negative energy. So if you know somebody who's always, oh man, they canceled the gig, man, freaking I can't stand this, blah, 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 and all this negative energy, that's what's happening. It could be, you could be friends with the most talented musician on the face of the earth, and every time you talk to them, you say, man, they're always so down and negative. I wonder what's going on. And I truly believe that's what it is.
Yes, yes.
And I think we have to take corrective measures. Once again, first of all, the first step is acknowledgement, self-awareness, and the second step is taking corrective measures to not allow ourselves to get to that point.
I'm totally with you. And you know, it's funny, you said a lot of stuff just now that really resonates with me for a number of reasons. And some of the language you used is very similar to language that I tend to use about the same subject. But the other thing I want to kind of dovetail off of what you said is you also have to remember, and I say this to your listeners, you have to remember that we're talking about two separate entities that aren't necessarily, they're not diametrically opposed, but that's art and commerce. So
yes, I say that all the time.
Exactly,
yes.
exactly.
He took the words right out of my mouth.
See, I knew we were brothers. I knew it.
Art and commerce weren't necessarily meant to mix.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And I would say, like, some people feel like they're parallel paths and they don't meet. I disagree. I feel like it's a scale. Some things you do are going to be 90% commerce, 10% art. Some are going to be 10%, art, 10%, 90%, whatever. You do the math.
Yes, I love it.
But my point being, when you're talking about this, when you're talking about like leaving yourself open, because not only being creative in that sense, but as a sideman and as a studio musician, a lot of times you have to exactly where I'm going with this, which is that artist that's in the room that's trying to create. You've got to make space for them, or block for them, or allow them to remain open and receptive to like the muse and whatnot. So it's like you can't bring your shit in. You're not getting paid to bring in all the bullshit that happened the day before. One of the reasons they want you in the room is your job is to like open those gates and open those floodgates and let them feel like anything is possible. They're like, man, can we try that on Bouzouki? You're like, absolutely.
You're guiding the muse into the room to help them get inspired.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it's like, and I think that you have to remember that we are in a service industry when you're talking about commerce, when you're talking about being a sideman. We are in a service industry, and you have to put your ego out the door. And I mean, that doesn't mean not to have a strong ego in the sense of self, in the sense of like who you are, what you have to contribute, and all that stuff. But in that sense of like you were in the service of someone's art, someone's music, that composition, that recording. You're in the service of that, and you're trying to bring your best self to it, and you're also trying to allow them to be their best self. Because if they feel like they're their best self when you're in the room, they'll always call you back in. And I'll give you a quick story.
That's that added value you're talking about. Yeah.
And I'll give you a quick story about Dean Parks, who's one of my favorite people on the planet and one of my favorite musicians that's ever touched any instrument.
Okay, you have to promise me something. Will you introduce me to Dean?
Yes,
I've been dying to meet. I mean,
I was supposed to a while ago too.
It's going to have to be virtually.
Yeah. And I mean, he's just just an incredible person. And I mean, once again, it's like he's so lovely and down to earth, and just such an incredible musician. But I remember hearing a story. David Foster's kind of right hand for a long time. Told me a story about working with David in the studio, that he was talking about the day he met Dean Parks. And he said, I guess David was in the studio working with some guitar player, and it was not going well. And David was like, nope, over, get me Dean Parks, right? And they were like, Dean's on a session. He goes, I didn't ask you. I mean, basically he was like, shut it down. We're shutting down until Dean gets here. So Matt, I'm talking about Matt TP, who we love to death.
Oh, yeah.
So
we love Matt.
So Matt was like, man, he's stressed out. He's like, man, this dude Dean Parks is coming in. Obviously, this guy's like, the yo of the yo cats and all that stuff. And he thought he was going to come in with like crazy vibe and and yada yada yada. And Dean
and attitude.
Dean walks in with a mustache and a beard and a baseball cap. And he's like, hey, how's everybody doing? And just walks in and just laces it. And I'll tell you another really quick story. A buddy of mine was recording at Capitol Records, and I think he was recording in Capitol. I think he was in B, and he came in and he saw Dean coming in, and he's like, "Oh shoot, Dean's here recording in A." He's like, "Cool." He's like, "Well, when we take a break, I'm gonna go and say hi and and kind of poke my head in." So he finishes a tune, comes back and goes, "Hey, I came by to say hi to Dean," and they're like, "Dude, Dean's gone. He cut the whole record." Like Dean had cut the whole record in the time it took my friend to do one song. I was like, that's Dean. Yeah.
There you have it. I mean, what else do you need to know?
Yes. But sorry.
Okay.
No. You go ahead, please.
No. I've been wanting to get him on the podcast, so if you can help in any way, I would be greatly,
I'll shoot him a text.
Grateful.
Because
Greatly grateful.
Well, and I think that one of the big lessons for me about Dean also, and about that generation of guys and whatnot, is also the humanity. Is the fact that it's like, he truly is, like, that's who he is. I mean, I don't know him super well, but it's like every encounter I've had with him, I'm like, it's very consistent. Like the way he moves through the world, the way he plays, it's very consistent. That's the dude he is, And for me, that's not only important, but same thing with like George Deering and like those guys. It's like, just super. It's like not unassuming, and not, not falsely humble, but just real down to earth. He knows what he does. He's brilliant at what he does. But to me, the humanity part of it is actually the most important part. Because to me, art is a reflection of humanity, right? It's meant to reveal the inner self and reflect the world around you. So
I'm giving a virtual hug right now.
I'll take it.
Come on.
I'll take it.
That's it, bro.
Yeah, but it's like, so you have to like there isn't a part of this process as you move through the industry and as you grow up and grow older in this industry, that there's a lot of self-reflection. There's a lot of, of adjustment and a lot of kind of moving towards self-actualization because if you're truly in service of the art element of it, it's like you're trying to make room for it. You're trying to make space for it, and all that other bullshit, there's not enough room, man. It's like there's not enough room for all that, dude. So yeah.
That's right. And I always say that, and I love how you say, art is a reflection of humanity and vice versa. They go hand in hand. And to take that a step further, I always say athletics, right? Competitive athletics are measured by metrics, right? So stats but music is not.
Nope.
Once again, because it's an artistic medium, and each artist is supposed to be allowed the freedom to create art as they perceive
absolutely.
it. And I'll take it a step further. When you talk about the most elite athletes, the elite of the elite, in the ring or on the field, they are fierce competitors. As soon as the whistle blows or the buzzer hits and the game is over, they are best friends.
Yes.
So I wanna remind musicians that, number one, music is not a competitive sport, so let's not compare stats. But number two, let's embrace humanity like you just said, because at the end of the day, the best of the best are still BFs.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a really great analogy, and that reminds me of it's not the same, but it reminds me of something someone said a couple of years ago. I was speaking at the NAMM show, and somebody had a quote that really struck me, and it was about careers. And he said, in your career, you have to be fearless, but not careless. And he's like, think of it as a race car driver. He's like, if you drive with fear, you're going to wind up in the rails, but if or you're going to lose. But if you drive carelessly, you're going to wind up in the rails. Like, you're going to wind up wrecking.
Right.
So it's like, you have to understand and have confidence in what you have to offer. You have to know your vehicle or your instrument or your medium, and you have to, like, once again, drive with no fear but not careless. Like, you're not just trying to, like, you know what I'm saying. I don't have to continue the analogy.
Absolutely. No, I get it. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so moving on, thank you so much that Tariqh and I have figured out all the world's problems and how to solve them. All right, we got that done. Check.
Exactly. Now, who do I send this to?
Yeah. Oh, wait, are you mailing a check?
Yes,
Hold on.
exactly.
I don't think you could do that anymore. So, all right. So we covered studio etiquette, and we went around about, with humanity. Real quick, and I don't want to keep you too much longer, but talk about when you go on tour, talk about some of your tour essentials. I know that I have a very specific way, like I'm so anal retentive about this. I have a very specific way of how I pack.
Oh, really?
Not only my gear, but how I pack my personal items, my clothes and things.
Interesting, right?
So I'm just curious, are there anything, tour essentials that you need, you can't leave home without? Do you have any methods that you like to adhere to? Oh, this is how I do it every time.
So it's interesting you say that, because I would never say that I necessarily did, but I know that I had to explain to my wife. My wife is I call her civilian. She's not in the music industry. And
I love it.
And I had to tease her because I was like, I have a relationship with my bag that.
Yes.
Are you the same way?
See? That's why I asked you.
Well, because I'm like, honey,
you don't understand. The bag is sacred.
The bag is
right?
sacred. It's like I see that bag more than I see anything else in my life, and I know exactly where stuff goes in there and all that kind of. And I'm not super precious about it, because for me, typically, like what you're seeing me wear right now is what I'm in 90% of the time, unless it's like gig clothes. More recently. Two things. One, I've taken up photography, and so I have.
Nice.
You can probably see it back there, but I've got a camera bag that also fits my laptop and all that kind of stuff, and yada yada yada. And that for me is hugely important, because for me it's sanity. It's just being able to get away from the tour. So like on a day off, I'll typically go try to find a used record store, look through records, and because it's like it's fun, and then I'll take it to a coffee shop and look at what I've gotten and maybe take some pictures.
Good idea.
And it's cool because it's also, you wind up in the coolest parts of every town. Like you get to discover the city and the town, and it beats going to a bar and all that kind of madness. And I don't go to clubs. I mean, I drink, but that's normally in my room by myself alone with the lights off.
Yeah. Curled up in a ball, naked.
Just deep racking sobs, just weeping in the shower. Yes, I'll grab a shower beer and just like Bull Durham it.
Wait a minute. That totally messes up our bar story that I mentioned earlier.
Sorry, I apologize.
Yeah. So what are you insinuating?
Sorry, I apologize. No, but so that's something that's been important to me. And then the other thing, and this is actually kind of to get into the, this is goes back to what we're talking about in terms of staying viable and all that stuff. I have a traveling recording rig that fits in, obviously your listeners can't see it, but I've got a small Pelican that actually fits in the can fit in the bottom of my bag.
Overhead.
Yeah.
Nice.
I'll show you how small it is. It's
even cooler.
It's like it's that big. I mean, once again, your listeners can't see it.
Yep.
But I can fit in there my Apollo Twin interface, 2 KM184s, which are on a retractable thing here at my house, at my studio. Nice. But that way, I can record acoustic guitars. I can record electrics. I'm actually working with Yamaha Line 6 with the Helix native software, so that I can not only record guitars directly into the DAW, but they're baked into the session. So let's say, for instance, let's say I'm in Florida and you and I are co-writing a song. I actually can play it. It's baked into the session, and then if I pull that song up 6 weeks later, I have the exact same sounds, exact same settings, and all that stuff. That and this little mini keyboard that's on my studio desk right now. It's a little high.
That's perfect.
And for me, that way, what I've found is a good workflow for me is that's something I can take to a coffee shop and work on a track. And then I can actually come back to the house and I literally plug my laptop into my bigger rig here. So I don't have to worry about, okay, does my computer at home have the latest yada yada yada, or this update, or
it got
the sounds.
Everything all.
It's all the same thing that just plugs into different rigs. So if I come to your place, I can plug into your rig or yada yada yada. And to me, that was part of me adapting to not only contemporary workflow, but the idea that, nobody cares these days where you are or where something. So for instance, I had to record some acoustic guitars recently for a couple of records and stuff like that. And I was on the road. There wasn't an option of, hey, let me get over to Capitol, or hey, let me go to my friend's place, or hey, yada, or I'm at home and I've got my rig set up. I literally had to set up in the hotel room. In fact, I did that for like a couple of records. But
nice.
Well, I mean, like I was in New York we did the Shed show. Do you remember? Did I talk to you about that when we did it was like this opening of this new venue in New York, incredible venue, and we played. Nice. We played. I think we were there for like 3 weeks in New York, like kind of like playing at the same place for like 3 weeks. So I had to keep working. So I literally had the rig set up in the hotel room, and I'd bring guitars back, cut tracks at night, go do the shows. But I'm like, nobody cares. Nobody cares where they're coming from. It's one of those things where I wanted to find a workflow where I could be as transitory as I tend to be, I love being home,
Right.
but the current metrics, economic metrics, are such that, as we were talking about earlier, you have to have a larger piece of the pie. So if
Right.
I'm working, let's say, on co-writes or sync queue or something like that, nobody wants to hear, "Hey man, let me get back to you in 2 weeks." You know what I mean?
No.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey,
You got to crush it
they're like,
now.
do you have those?
You
Yeah,
got to start it and finish
I was
it.
like, do you have
today.
those stems? I'm like, yeah, I've got my hard drives right here. Let me just
Yep.
like I'm actually on a bus. Give me 5 minutes or whatever, and to
Yep.
me, that has probably been the most important thing in terms of travel essentials and touring essentials for me. Because the other stuff, once again, with the guitar gear and all that stuff, somebody else is taking care of that 90% of the time. I just make sure that, but it's for me, being able to keep the momentum going wherever I am has been a huge, once again, technology's gotten so great now, it's possible, but that's become a huge thing.
So for the listeners who may not be aware, what Tariqh is talking about when he says the guitar thing is taken care of is when you're on a gig of a certain level, you usually have a full crew, a full tour staff. And in the crew, you have backline techs. And the backline techs, tend to the drums, the keyboards, the guitars, the bass, whatever. So oftentimes I would almost venture to say that it's been a long time since you've gone on the road without a guitar tech, right? I mean, that
Yes
sounds...
and no.
I can't imagine maybe you do some fly dates where you have to bring a small rig.
Exactly. I've had to kind of fly in and out and all that stuff. And not to plug the Helix stuff, but here.
Oh, I love the Helix
Yes,
stuff.
and one of the things that's been super cool about it is it opens up now as a plug-in in your DAW. So once again, all your sounds are baked in. But if you have the floor unit...
I like how you say that, baked in. Sorry, I love that term.
Yes, exactly. But if you've also got the floor unit, you can actually download those sounds straight into the unit. So you can actually take sounds from the stage to the studio and all that stuff. And they had me playing through one of the floor units for the last NAMM show because I was doing something for Yamaha, and they were like, "Hey, Yamaha bought Line 6." They're like, "Do you mind trying to do the show on this versus bringing all your typical whatever pedals?" I was like, "I'll give it a shot," and I fell in love with it. And they've been blown away by how blown away I've been, because it's not normally my vibe to go down that rabbit hole. But my entire workflow has changed now to where I literally have the floor unit and the DAW, and I've got the rack unit, and I've got the smaller Line 6 HX effects.
Oh, wow.
Because it's like they all have a different use. For instance, I was supposed to do a thing with Josh in Japan for this TV show. And it was literally, I was going to be the only U.S. musician directing and playing with all these Japanese musicians. And I was like,
Sure.
I can't bring my full rig, but I can bring the Helix floor, and I can backline some guitars and bring like my main axe or something like that. And I'm like, I can do it, And that was something that really,
that's right.
I was like, that's something to say, yeah.
Yeah. No, that makes it extremely viable. I did the same thing for the last year and a half. I was on tour with Face. I had the Helix floor unit.
Oh, right.
And we plugged it directly into the system. I didn't even use cabinets, dude. Now, I will say this. I'm the same way. I have cabinets here in my studio that I mic up and record, and I know you're the same way. And I love pushing air, as we call it, the speakers. But the production manager was like, look, man, just try this, see if you like it, because it'll help keep production costs down, and it'll help keep the stage volume lower, which is always, front of house engineers, that's their biggest battle, right? So it worked out. It was great. And I will say, especially for the type of music I was playing, the R&B stuff, you don't need to be, the guitars aren't front and center. They're more like, they're sprinkling on the cake, But I know a lot of rock guys who use them too. So, I think it's a very versatile unit.
And I actually, when I was getting used to using mine, I talked to Andy Abad a fair amount. And Andy's been using one with Jennifer Lopez, and he was like, dude, I've gotten to the point now where that's all I'm using is the Helix floor. And Fish with Christina and with Tony, he was using, I want to say it might have been the Helix, it might have been something else, but I think it was the Helix. And he was...
And also...
No, go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, finish the
Fish.
I
was just saying, and I remember him talking to me saying, when he went out with Tony, he's like, I'm not using any cabinets, I'm just going straight in. And it's obviously not our preference, but for me, going back to kind of conceptually, the global look of where we are currently, sometimes you can't have that luxury. Sometimes you're put in a position to where, like you said, finances are an issue, or travel's an issue, or stage volume. And having these tools, if you don't have these tools, then you kind of fall into that category of like, you're kind of letting technology get away from you. You know what I mean? Like, if everybody else,
that's right.
Like I remember doing a session at a guy's house and bringing my pedal board and an amp and all that stuff, and he's like, "Really, man?" He's like, "You're still using that stuff?" He's like, "These are like, I just had my floors refinished." You know what I mean? Like, he was like kind of bagging on me because he's like, "Man, next time can you just bring something smaller?" And I was like, "But man, my sound." He's like, "Yeah, whatever." He's like, just get in and get it done.
That's right.
And there was something I was going to say about. I forgot. I lost it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's all right. Well, we were talking about Fish, and the same thing with Tim Stewart.
Oh,
with Lady
right.
Gaga.
Okay.
I just interviewed him before all this crisis with the
COVID
virus, and he was telling me that he's going direct. I think he's using the other rig, not the Helix, but he's using Axis.
Yes.
I think he's using
right. Okay,
that.
that makes sense.
Or was it the other one, the amp modeler?
Well, there's
one?
the
What's
Kemper.
That one?
Yes.
The Kemper. I think he's using Kempers. He's
and
using
that's
Kempers,
been a really popular choice. And I have found a couple of workarounds with the Helix. And I have to say, once again, I always say, it's just been recent since I've been using it, but I have started to say, I should say, that it's an incredible tool, but it's not an instrument. In the sense that, like,
That's right.
like I have a vintage Marshall that, like, it's an inspiration machine. I plug into that thing, and it's like immediately I start to respond a different way. It's not that for me.
Right.
But in terms of being an incredible tool, it's an incredible tool, and I can get it sounding close enough to that to where I don't have to bring my vintage Marshall out and all that stuff. So it's an incredible tool, especially in today's day and age, where there are other constraints that we can't control. So yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah, buddy.
All right, so this has been amazing. For a wrap up, I want to play a little game here.
I'm in.
Just a list of rapid fire questions.
I'm in.
So
can I curse?
I don't want you to think. You could do whatever the fuck you want.
All right. This is gonna get good fast. Wait, let me get another martini.
You better. Yeah, exactly. Well, good, because that's part of the questions. All right, here we go. Drum roll, please, or guitar riff, please. Yeah, exactly. That was your Yngwie Malmsteen impression. I love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Ready? Here we go. Favorite food?
Sushi.
Favorite libation?
Right now, mezcal.
Ooh, mezcal. I like it. Favorite sport, if you do have one?
Baseball.
Okay. How do you spend your free time? Now you have some more, I'm sure.
Playing guitar. I'm such a loser. Such a loser. I know. Sorry.
Wrong answer.
I'm such a loser.
What activities do you enjoy on long flights?
Listening to music, Radiohead especially. Huge Radiohead fan.
Okay, that's nice segue into what's the last song, band, or artist you listened to that you did not work on?
Oh gosh. Pat Metheny. What's the record called? American. I'll find the name of the album, but it is incredible, and I'm a huge Pat Metheny fan.
I think I remember what you're talking.
Yeah, I'm a huge.
I think I remember the one you're talking about because I was a big fan of his. For many years.
He's one of my biggest inspirations and influences.
Yes, he's ridiculous. Favorite TV show and or movie?
Right now, The Office and or Parks and Recreation. I drive my wife crazy watching reruns.
That's funny. Okay, my wife drives me crazy watching reruns of Bob's Big Burger.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious!
And I Love Lucy.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. Love it.
So I can relate. Okay, now this has changed. I was going to say shopping online or brick and mortar, but we can't do brick and mortar right now. But in the past, what do you prefer for shopping?
Brick and mortar, especially for me, records. Like, I love going to record stores. It's like it kind of defeats the purpose. I like being able to order something I want, or if I'm thinking about something online, but it defeats the purpose. There's something about the culture of the record store, that I like. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like it's like a hardcover book. There's something about the culture of dog earring pages and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and the old bookstores and record stores have a certain
Yes,
smell.
oh, absolutely.
Right? That it's like the collection of all those artifacts together brings nostalgia.
And there's also a certain kind of group think or group culture. There's something about being around those people, and I don't care if it's Johnny Cash or Lightning Hopkins or Sun Ra.
Yeah.
It's like there's something about being around people who appreciate and love the same thing, like that energy and all the stuff that I love. Like I love going to a great smoky club. I'd rather go to a smoky club than an arena 7 days a week and twice on Sunday.
Ooh, oh, totally,
Yes.
totally. All right, now and this may be hard because you've collaborated with a lot of people already, but do you have a dream collaboration?
Oh, you mean golly.
As a musician?
Oh, wow. Do you mean like who I'd want to play for, or do you mean like
You could play for them, you could
Oh,
produce for them, you could
gosh.
co-write with them, and it could be the past or it could be dead or alive.
it would probably
dream collaboration.
I have 3, 2 of whom are related.
Go for it.
It'd probably be Joni Mitchell, Wayne Shorter, or James Taylor.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Joni and James.
Yes,
of
well,
course.
and
Yeah,
Joni
I
and
like
Wayne,
it.
like yes,
Oh, I didn't even
yeah,
realize that.
there's a long relationship with those two that there's something about that. They're both angels that walk this earth. Yeah.
Wow, I love that. Okay, and final question.
Yep.
You ready? What would you do if you weren't a career musician?
Oh my gosh. Well, the logical answer is I had planned to be a lawyer, but I probably would be an alcoholic at this point because I would have hated it so much. So the truth of the matter is, and this is one of my favorite jokes, is if I won the lottery, I'd probably play guitar till I ran out of money. So
I like it.
so it's like
All right, but if you didn't win the lottery and you had to have another
I had to have another job.
and it wasn't a lawyer.
Oh, you know what? It wasn't a lawyer. It might still be around music. Like I've always dreamt of having a radio show. I've always dreamt of
nice.
being and it would probably be like a late night college radio, like really kind of off the beaten path cuts, like old like Ry Cooder and like stuff like that. Yeah, I'd probably be that guy that
Nice.
like always smells of stale cigars and doesn't cut his nails enough. I'd be that guy. His nails are yellowed with tobacco.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Tariqh, Mr. Tariqh
Yeah,
Akoni.
man.
First of all, for the listeners who don't know, can you spell your name,
it's
please?
Tariqh, Tariqh, Akoni, Akoni. And that if you Google Tariqh Akoni, you'll see my Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and website and all that stuff. There's only one Tariqh with an H that I know of. Yeah.
That's what I was going to ask. And so all your socials and your website are by that spelling.
Yep.
Okay,
And
great.
just as a quick aside,
My brother-
Oh, go ahead.
No,
I was
go
gonna say,
ahead,
as
go
a quick
ahead.
aside, I always thought it was funny. I have at different times of my life gone by the handle of Mr. Road Weary. So my production company is Road Weary Productions, and and Road Weary Records and all that stuff. And you, with the name Nomad, I feel like we are bonded, not just as guitar players, but I feel like we are bonded in life. Yes.
And to be honest with you, there's 2 reasons why I chose the name, the alias. Number one, because everybody, and oftentimes back in the days when we had liner notes on albums, they would butcher my name, the spelling of my name. So literally, when you look at my discography online, it's Ripoli, Ripple, Ripple-I, RuPaul.
Yes. I've had the same. I know what you mean. Yes.
So number one, and then number 2, because look, we all are modern day nomads as musicians. We go where the muse takes us, man. And I've had over 20 some odd physical addresses in my lifetime. So
right.
I qualify. I think we all do. That's the point.
Absolutely, yeah, man. And well, thank you so much, Michael.
So Tariqh, man, this has been amazing.
I mean, it's been a pleasure for me, and we've been wanting to do this for a while. Thank you so much for inviting me on, and any and everything you need, just let me know.
Be sure to subscribe to the Career Musician podcast and like The Career Musician on all social platforms to stay up to date on news and topics that affect your music career.
Want to learn more about a particular topic? Tag @TheCareerMusician and use #CareerMusician to let us know what you'd like to hear.
I'm just just a nomad, nowhere man, writing the songs in this one-man band. A nomad, yeah, I'm a nomad. Hush now, darling, you'll be fine. I'll be back this way.
Hey, this is Nomad, host and creator of the Career Musician Podcast, and I am thoroughly stoked to be an official member of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Pantheon Podcast Network is the first of its kind as an all-music-based podcast collective. Please be sure to check us out at pantheonpodcast.com for more info.